Across millennia, a profound challenge echoes from the luminous fragments of the Chaldean oracles. What if knowledge without practice is not merely incomplete, but fundamentally deceptive?
There exists a certain intelligible, which you must perceive by the flower of mind. For if you should incline your mind toward it, and perceive it, as perceiving a specific thing, you would not perceive it. For it is the power of strength, visible all around, flashing with intellectual divisions. Therefore, you must not perceive that intelligible violently, but with the flame of mind completely extended, which measures all things, except that intelligible. You must not perceive it intently, but keeping the pure eye of your soul turned away. You should extend an empty mind toward the intelligible, in order to comprehend it, since it exists outside of your mind.
These words, mysterious, challenging, yet luminous with insight, come to us across nearly 2 millennia, fragments of a sacred teaching that once transformed souls and opened pathways between human consciousness and divine reality. They speak of perception beyond perception, of knowing beyond knowing, a paradoxical wisdom that invites us to transcend our conventional modes of understanding and glimpse the very architecture of existence itself. What if the most profound truths can only be grasped when we abandon our familiar ways of knowing? What mysteries might unfold when consciousness reaches beyond its own boundaries? And what ancient technologies of transformation await rediscovery by those who dare to perceive with the flower of mind? Welcome to our exploration of the Chaldean Oracles, one of antiquity's most profound yet enigmatic spiritual teachings. In this series, we will traverse the landscape of these sacred texts, not merely as historical artifacts, but as living, breathing patterns of divine consciousness that continue to resonate across time and space. What if these ancient fragments contain the keys to unlocking capacities of consciousness that modern civilization has systematically suppressed? But before we dive too deep, we first need to provide the historical context through which these ancient texts came about. The Chaldean oracles emerged during the 2nd century CE, during the reign of Marcus Aurelius, a time of profound philosophical and spiritual ferment across the Mediterranean world. Tradition attributes their authorship to Julian the Chaldean and his son Julian the Theurgist, who sought to articulate mystical wisdom received through divine revelation. Yet, unlike many ancient texts that come to us intact, the oracles survive only as fragments, approximately 220 pieces preserved primarily through the commentaries of later Neoplatonic philosophers. These fragments, like scattered stars in the night sky, invite us to discern the greater constellations of meaning they once formed. Have we truly lost the complete oracles? Or do they persist in the very structure of consciousness itself, awaiting those with eyes to see and ears to hear? The survival of these teachings owes much to luminaries such as Proclus and Damascius, who recognized in the oracles a profound spiritual technology that complemented and extended Platonic philosophy. Later, Byzantine scholars, particularly Michael Psellus in the 11th century, preserved and transmitted these teachings through the medieval period. During the Renaissance, with its revival of ancient wisdom, the oracles found new life among esoteric circles in Europe. Figures like Marsilio Ficino and later Gemistus Plethon recognized in these fragments a system of thought that bridged philosophical inquiry with direct spiritual experience. Yet, what makes the Chaldean oracles particularly relevant for our modern spiritual landscape is their emphasis on pattern recognition across scales of existence, what we might call a Holoeidetic framework. This approach resonates profoundly with contemporary understandings of fractal reality, holographic principles, and the interconnectedness of consciousness and cosmos. Could it be that these ancient seers anticipated the leading edge of our modern scientific understanding? What if our most advanced physics and consciousness studies are only now rediscovering what the theurgists of antiquity knew through direct experience? At their core, the Chaldean oracles represent a remarkable synthesis of Platonic metaphysics with mystical elements drawn from various Eastern traditions, particularly Babylonian, Persian, and Egyptian sources. Unlike purely theoretical philosophical systems, however, the oracles emphasize theurgy, literally divine work, as distinct from theology, which concerns itself merely with words about gods. What if our centuries of philosophical contemplation have led us down a path of diminishing returns? Could it be that the ancient dichotomy between knowing and doing, between theology and theurgy, reveals the fundamental limitation of Western thought itself? This emphasis on practical engagement with divine forces marks one of the oracle's most significant innovations. Where conventional philosophy might theorize about ultimate reality, the oracles provide techniques for directly experiencing and participating in it. They offer not merely a map of cosmic structures, but a set of tools for navigating them consciously. Let us hear from other fragments that illuminates this approach.
Seek out the channel of the soul, from where it descended in a certain order to serve the body, and seek how you will raise it up again to its order by combining ritual action with a sacred word, urging yourself onward to the center of the clamorous light. Let the immortal depth of your soul be opened. May all of your eyes stretch upward on high.
This seemingly simple instruction contains profound guidance for the spiritual practitioner. It speaks to the active, intentional direction of consciousness toward divine reality. Not passive contemplation, but dynamic engagement. The Chaldean system shares certain elements with contemporary traditions like Hermeticism, Neoplatonism, and even certain Gnostic teachings. However, its distinctive focus on theurgic practice, ritual actions designed to align human consciousness with divine patterns, sets it apart as a particularly potent approach to spiritual transformation. What secret lineages have preserved these practices beneath the surface of orthodox traditions? And why have institutions of power throughout history sought to suppress direct experiential engagement with the divine in favor of mediated, authorized interpretations? Central to our exploration in understanding of the oracles is what we call the Holoeidetic framework, from the Greek words meaning whole form or complete pattern. This perspective recognizes that divine realities manifest as self-similar patterns across all scales of existence. Just as a hologram contains the whole image in each fragment, every level of reality contains and expresses the complete divine pattern according to its capacity. This understanding transforms our approach to the oracles from mere historical study to active engagement with living wisdom that continues to manifest across time and space. As we delve into the divine hierarchy described in the oracles, remember that we are not merely examining an ancient cosmological model, but exploring a pattern language that remains accessible to the prepared consciousness. A technology of transformation as relevant today as it was nearly 2 millennia ago. Is it possible that the cosmic architecture revealed in these fragments is not merely metaphorical, but describes the actual structure of consciousness itself? At the summit of the Chaldean cosmology stands what the oracles call the Paternal Monad, the ineffable, transcendent source of all existence. Let us hear how the oracles describe this ultimate reality.
Perceiving the good itself, where the paternal monad exists. For the monad is extensible, which generates duality.
These fragments reveal the paradoxical nature of ultimate reality, simultaneously unified and generative, complete yet expansive. The paternal monad represents not merely the first in a sequence of beings, but the ever-present source and ground of all manifestation. It exists beyond categories of being and non-being, yet gives rise to all specific forms of existence. Why have our conventional, religious and philosophical systems consistently failed to reconcile unity and multiplicity? Could the Chaldean concept of an extensible monad resolve the perennial tension between absolute transcendence and immanent presence that has fractured Western thought for centuries? From this inconceivable source emerges what the oracles call the first transcendent fire, the primary emanation and creative principle. As the oracles tell us,
for the first transcendent fire does not enclose its own power in matter by means of works, but by intellect.
And another fragment adds,
the Father snatched himself away, and did not enclose his own fire in his intellectual power.
This fire represents divine consciousness in its most pristine form, dynamic, intelligent, and generative, yet not directly involved with material manifestation. It remains transcendent while simultaneously giving rise to the next level of divine reality. What if this fire is not merely metaphorical, but describes a fundamental energetic substrate of consciousness itself? Could modern physics' understanding of energy fields and quantum potential be approaching through different language what the ancients experienced directly as divine fire? From the interaction of the paternal monad and first transcendent fire emerges the second intellect and the divine dyad. The oracles speak directly to this.
For the Father perfected all things and handed them over to the second intellect, which you, the entire human race, call the first intellect.
This profound statement reveals a key insight. What humanity generally perceives as the highest divine reality, the first intellect, is actually already a secondary manifestation. Our conventional understanding fails to grasp the truly transcendent nature of the paternal monad. Do our greatest religious and philosophical traditions only reach to this second intellect, mistaking it for the ultimate? Have the mystics and visionaries throughout history who claimed direct experience of something beyond conventional theology been touching upon that which the oracles call the true paternal monad? The text further elaborates.
Beside this one sits a dyad, for it has a double function. It both possesses the intelligibles in its mind and brings sense perception to the worlds.
Here we encounter the theurgic principle that shapes the cosmos, a divine intelligence that serves as intermediary between transcendent realities and the manifested universe. This dyad possesses both receptive and projective functions, receiving the pure patterns from above while simultaneously projecting them into manifestation below. Could this bridging function of the dyad be the missing key to understanding consciousness itself? Is our own awareness fundamentally dyadic, simultaneously capable of both receiving higher impressions and projecting them into manifestation? Perhaps most significant for our understanding is the triadic structure that pervades the entire Chaldean cosmology. The oracles make this explicit.
For the intellect of the Father said for all things to separate into three, governing all things by the intellect of the very first eternal Father. He nodded his assent to this, and immediately all things were separated.
Another fragment affirms this triadic principle operates at every level.
For in every world shines a triad, ruled by a monad.
And yet another reveals the generative power of this structure.
For in the womb of this triad, all things are sown.
This triadic structure represents one of the most profound examples of the Holoeidetic framework in action, the principle that divine patterns repeat across all scales of existence. Just as the highest levels of reality manifest as a trinity in unity, so too do all subsequent levels express this same fundamental pattern, each according to its capacity and nature. Is it mere coincidence that triadic structures appear in virtually every major spiritual tradition? Or does the prevalence of trinities across disparate cultures and epochs suggest that this pattern reflects something fundamental about the structure of consciousness and reality itself? What if the Christian Trinity, the Hindu Trimurti, and the Taoist Three Pure Ones all point toward the same cosmic architecture described in the Chaldean Oracles? The divine hierarchy continues to unfold through various levels of being, from the Ingis, divine messengers, to the connectors, cosmic binding forces, to the material world itself, each level reflecting and expressing the fundamental patterns established at the highest reaches of reality. What makes this understanding transformative is the recognition that these are not merely abstract philosophical constructs, but living, dynamic patterns that structure consciousness itself. By recognizing and aligning with these patterns, the Theurgy, the spiritual practitioner, can navigate the cosmic architecture and participate consciously in divine reality. What would it mean for our understanding of consciousness if these patterns are not only descriptive but constitutive of awareness itself? What if our very capacity to perceive, to know and to transform is structured according to these same divine templates? Understanding the divine hierarchy described in the oracles is not merely an intellectual exercise, but a prerequisite for effective theurgic practice.
For there exists a certain intelligible which you must perceive by the flower of mind.
This perception beyond perception requires specific techniques and approaches that the oracles outline with remarkable precision. The practice involves recognizing divine patterns across scales and developing the capacity to navigate consciously between these different levels of reality. Have we been trained through conventional education and cultural conditioning to perceive reality through artificial constraints that blind us to these deeper patterns? What forgotten capacities of perception might we reclaim through the theurgic practices described in these ancient fragments? The Chaldean approach to spiritual practice emphasizes pattern recognition, learning to perceive how the same divine structures manifest at cosmic, planetary, and personal levels. This perception allows the practitioner to establish resonance between these levels, creating pathways for consciousness to ascend and divine influences to descend. In our next exploration, we'll delve deeper into the Chaldean cosmology and examine the various divine forces that populate this multidimensional reality. We'll explore the practical techniques for engaging these forces and the ethical considerations that guide theurgic practice. What dangerous powers might be awakened through careless application of these techniques? And why did ancient theurgists insist upon rigorous preparation and ethical foundation before engaging with these potent cosmic forces? The Chaldean oracles offer us more than historical insights or philosophical abstractions. They provide a comprehensive framework for understanding reality as a manifestation of divine patterns that repeat across all scales of existence. What might we learn by approaching these fragments not as historical curiosities, but as precise technical manuals for navigating consciousness itself?